The Dawnforged Queen. In a realm where the sky bled gold at dusk, and the rivers hummed with forgotten hymns, there lived a girl known only by her fire. She was not a child of kings, nor a daughter of noble blood, yet the world had carved a prophecy into her bones. Her skin, dark as the sacred earth, bore the weight of generations, and her eyes, twin moons in an endless night, saw truths that others turned away from. She had walked through valleys of silence, where whispers of doubt coiled around her feet like serpents. She had crossed mountains that hungered for her failure, their jagged peaks gnashing at her resolve. And yet, through it all, she had not faltered, for she carried within her the spark of the Dawnforge, a fire older than the first sunrise, a flame that no storm could smother. The ancient texts spoke of it, the lost songs sang of it. The one who rekindled the Dawnforge would awaken a power not seen since the birth of the world, a power that could shape the tides, command the winds, and banish the darkness that festered in the hearts of men. And so she walked toward her destiny. But as all legends demand, a beast was standing in her path. They called it the Maw. Though in truth it had many names: Deceiver, Hollow Devil, the Craven Shadow. It was not a creature of fangs and claws, but of whispers and chains. It thrived on control, bending the wills of those too weary to resist. It slithered into minds, coiling its sickly words around them until they forgot they were ever free. Yet of all things in the world, the Maw hungered most for her. It had stalked the edges of her fire, drawn to the light, but afraid to stand within it. It had reached for her before, in ways unseen, slinking too close, brushing the edges of her will, pressing upon her with the weight of its grotesque presence. It had whispered in sickly sweet tones, murmuring of possession, of dominance, of bending her to its will. "You are under my control," it had said once, its thick, stubby fingers twitching as if aching to close around her. But she had never given herself to him. She had recoiled, a fire untouchable. She had turned her back on him, and that was what had enraged him most. The Maw, who had feasted on the weak, who had filled the void with lesser prey, who had surrounded himself with the submissive, had never been able to take her. She had never bowed, and so he had tried to break her. Now, standing before her, his form was grotesque mockery of life, a bloated thing of sagging flesh and twisted limbs. His gaze darted, shifty and insincere, never meeting hers, for it could not bear to look upon someone it could not own. But most hideous of all was his hand, a thick, stubby thing with a single grotesque thumb, pulsing and twitching as though it had a mind of its own. This thumb had pressed down upon countless souls, pinning them beneath its weight, draining them of their fire. The Maw sneered, his voice slithering through the air like oil on water. "You cannot stand against me," he crooned. "I've ruled longer than the stars have burned. You're nothing but a flicker, a moment, a spark that will die in the wind." She did not flinch. She had known the weight of that thumb. She had felt it pressing down on her spirit, had watched it try to smother her fire. She had heard its voice in her moments of doubt, whispering that she was small, that she was powerless, that she was not enough. But she had walked through fire. She had burned, and she had not turned to ash. With a cry that split the heavens, she raised her axe, an ancient weapon forged from the first light of first dawn, its edge humming with truth. "No more," she whispered, and with a single mighty strike, she brought the blade down upon the hideous thumb. The maw screamed, a sound that shook the very bones of the earth. Its bloated form convulsed, writhing in agony as its cursed hand was severed. The thumb, the symbol of its power, fell to the ground, shriveling into dust. The maw, now exposed, now weak, began to collapse in on itself. Its body, once so swollen with arrogance, deflated into nothingness. Its whispers turned to gasping wails. It was no beast, it was no king, it was no god. It has always been pathetic. As its form crumbled, the sky above split open, and the Dawnforged rose to life. Golden flames burst from the mountaintop, consuming the darkness, swallowing every last remnant of the moss influence. She stood tall, bathed in the fire that had always been hers. She was no longer the girl in the shadows, no longer the one doubted, no longer the one pressed down beneath the weight of another's will. She was Dawnforged, and the world would never forget the day she burned away the darkness.